My name is Max Lund. I hail from northern Michigan. Like my fellow teammates, I volunteered because the draft was going to have me anyway. So I volunteered for the Army and then later volunteered for Vietnam. I got orders to report to a special training mission, which was pre-mission training for counterinsurgency. And so I came over as a member of the Phoenix program, and I was first assigned to Phu Thien District, which is in the northern part of Phu Bổn Province. And I worked there for several months, had an excellent Vietnamese counterpart. We worked well together and had many successes. I transferred from there to Tuan Man District. Again, had an excellent Vietnamese counterpart. And in both cases, these were North Vietnamese Catholics who had lost everything and had to flee south when the First Indochina War ended. Again, I had a man that really didn't need an advisor. And so I transferred from there to Phu Thuc, which is a southern district of Phu Bổn Province. There I had a very poor counterpart who was not very cooperative and not helpful at all. I was getting nowhere with him. So I ended up going out on regular patrols with the infantry guys, spent my time that way, and then I understood that the Special Forces were going to move out of Bon Bet Camp, which was on the west side of Phu Bổn Province. So I volunteered for that and became the transition team leader. So when the Special Forces left out, they left behind 465 Montagnard soldiers, and then we took over the position of their advisors and ran infantry operations out of Bon Blek, which I did for another 6 months. And then I had the honor of being brought back to Chia Rio and put into what was called the Ethnic Minorities Program. Turned out that was the best job I've ever had in my life. The advisor was a recently retired Special Forces and also CIA operative by the name of Ed Sprague, a man who had spent his life doing devious things all over the world. So I wholeheartedly went to work for him. He assigned me to the Minister of Ethnic Minorities for the province, a man by the name of Nay Luett, who short time later was then appointed to the Ministry of Ethnic Minorities as the minister for the whole country. And so that spurred me on to learn more about the Montagnard structure. And whenever he was in Chia Rio, I would accompany him and we would meet with the leaders, not only in the Fubon area, but throughout the Highlands. And so I got to know and spend time with many of the men that were shaping up the future of the Montagnard people. Mm. While I was his advisor and working with him, we were tasked with creating 37 30-man self-help teams, which we did. And we were able to recruit a lot of young Montagnard men who were being laid off for having worked for Special Forces, but the U.S. was drawing down and they were being laid off from their jobs. So we were recruiting them for these 30-man teams. And we used these 30-man teams and put them out in villages all over the province. And the best part of that, of course, was that I had already worked in every area of the province and was familiar with the villages and many of the local leaders. It was a real natural fit for me to be able to come back to these places with these 30-man teams. And in that way, we provided the villagers with a bit of military help, but also a lot of self-help. For instance, if they needed to have a well dug or a fish pond project, or they needed to have their security beefed up, our 30-man teams could do that. And so my job then was going around and monitoring these teams and helping them with equipment and that sort of thing. and they in turn were helping the villagers to improve their life. So we had a lot of projects that centered around the villagers, and which required us quite often to help the villagers celebrate by drinking way too much rice wine. But it was part of the job. We had to do it. And that, in a nutshell, is my experience in Fubon. Very enjoyable. Met and worked with many very wonderful people.
You mentioned Ksor Hip. How did you meet him, and how well did you know him?
Oh, Ksor Hip was a very interesting young man. He was appointed by the Minister of Ethnic Minorities to run the boarding school. Between Ed Sprague and I, we ended up being advisors to several different organizations that seemed to come our way. And so that was one of my other jobs, was to be education advisor. And so I met with Ksor Hip, and I learned that he was the first Montagnard to learn how to read and write music. And he was very interested in having a music career, and he was constantly recruiting kids to learn to play different music. And he formed his own little band. We called him Ksor Hip and the Hippies. And they were going around, they would play in villages, and he was very interested in creating, and did create, what we called a culture drama team of, well, it was almost 30. It was 15 girls and 15 boys. The boys were all musicians. The girls were singers and dancers. Hip arranged for them to put together a program, and practiced a program of going to villages and singing the old songs and dancing the old dances, and keeping the cultural tradition alive in the province. And we did that in conjunction with our self-help teams. So that's how I met Ksor Hip, and we're friends still today.
He's still making songs even today.
Yes.
He told me he's 86,
Uh-huh.
but I don't think that's his real age.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about Nay Blim? I'm just curious.
Nay Blim was the elected congressman, and I met him because he would return home to Chireo on a couple times a month. We would always provide security for him, and the Minister of Ethnic Minorities didn't like the fact that I was spending a lot of time alone in the villages with just an interpreter. So he assigned me a bodyguard, and the bodyguard was Nay Blim's son, who had just been laid off from Special Forces. So I had a friendship with the elected congressman as well as his son. In addition to that, my interpreter at the time was Ksor Cooley, who was the Senator Rutt's son. And of course, both Racham Gru and Ksor Cooley had accompanied their dads around the province as they were campaigning for the job of congressman and for the job of senator. So these two young guys knew everybody in the province. I thought that I was the greatest advisor in the world because I'd go into a village and people were welcoming. They were there to see Racham Gru and Ksor Cooley. They could care less about me, but they let me think I was okay.
Do you know Nay Honh too?
Nay Honh, yes. I went on several operations with Nay Honh. I had a very interesting introduction to him. If you knew Nay Honh, he had a very deep command voice, and he had been a lieutenant in the French army with the First Indochina War. And when I went up to him to be introduced, he said, "How old are you?" And it took me kind of aback because that was unusual for a Montagnard. And then I said, "Well, I'm 24, sir." And he said, "And I am 42, and I've already been in 2 wars. What will you teach me?" and I was just left to stutter and say, "Well, I don't know. Maybe I'll learn from you." And I did. I went on several operations with him. He was a master tactician. He was very good at combat operations. So to this day, and he just passed away 2 years ago. But on my trips to North Carolina to visit our friends there that migrated there, Nay Honh and I would always get together, and he would try to have as many people in the room as he could at the time. And then he would say, "Tell me again, how old were you when you were my advisor?" And that was our little joke, I guess you would call it.
I knew him really well. I knew
Yeah.
his family really well too. I'm still connected with his family even
Yeah.
today. I think his children will be really glad to see this video of you, telling story about their dad.
And I met 2 other advisors who had worked with Nay Honh, who had all the best to say about him. He was a very generous man with his time.